So Ed Gein, you know him, even if you don't know his name. He's inspired some of the best serial killer movies, including Psycho, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Silence of the Lambs. He is an example of a terrible childhood developing a terrible adult. We're going to go in semi-chronological order, so starting with his abusive childhood, his psycho mother, and then with coping with her death, and him wanting to be a woman himself, and digging up graves, and finally his capture. So Ed didn't have a chance at being happy from the beginning. His mother is a major catalyst for some of his future proclivities. According to Sedlik Havener, author for Ranker.com, in 2018 she stated that Augusta was devoutly Lutheran. She proclaimed that sin was all around them, especially in women, who she called hussies, of course aside from her. So her children, Ed and his brother Henry, were completely isolated from anyone. So they were not allowed to speak to anybody, they were not allowed to have friends, they only went to and from school, and if Ed came home and told her about people that he had met, she belittled them, chastised him for making friends, and basically made it so he never wanted to talk to anyone again. And this is Ed Gein, if you can't tell, and this is his mother, Augusta. So his father didn't really have a chance at raising a well-adjusted son, even if he really wanted to, as Augusta was the matriarch of the family. So she took over everything. She was a serious alcoholic who was actually abusive. He hit Ed in the head several times. He was beaten into submission near daily by Augusta, and he owned nothing. She had full control of the store, the general store that they owned in the house that they lived in, because she didn't believe he could take care of it. And Ed was a complete wreck after she died. She had a heart attack. She had a stroke and she died nearly a year after Henry's mysterious death. So in 2012, psychologist Dr. Nicola Davies stated that Ed's obsession with his mother was due to her being a part of his identity. So when she passed, she took a part of him with her. So Britannica author John Jenkins in 2015 noted that she had left Ed with no way to cope with her death. He had no friends, he had nobody around him, his brother was dead, his father was dead, and she had made herself the center of his world. So she'd isolated him. Henry Gein's death, a year before Augusta's, is still debated. Did Gein kill her? Jenkins wrote that Henry didn't support Augusta's treatment of Ed. He had occasionally confronted her in front of Ed, which didn't sit well with Ed. True crime reporter Michael Dunn reported in 2017 that Henry had officially died from asphyxiation while stemming a fire with Ed on their farm. This is contested by both how quickly Ed had led the cops to Henry's body and the bruises all over his head, which are inconsistent with asphyxiation. So his mother is dead, his father drank himself to death years before, and his brother died from smoke inhalation. Ed decided to try being a woman and sitting on chairs made of skin. So after Henry, Augusta had made it clear to Ed that she wanted a female. She wanted a girl daughter. This, coupled with Ed's devotion to his mother, led him to become unsure of himself as a man, and he wanted to bring her back. He was less of a serial killer and more of a prolific body snatcher. He robbed 9 graves to create a skin suit and items around his house, according to Michael, including his mother's grave. He wanted to be closer to her. He wanted to construct a new version of her after her death. This bodysuit allowed him the freedom, stated David Horsfall, author for A&E in 2017. While he mainly dug up bodies, he did confess to killing 2 women, Mary Hogan and Bernice Worden. Mary Hogan was a tavern owner who disappeared in 1954. They never found her body, didn't know what happened to her. And then they found pieces of her in Ed's house. As Jenkins states, she bore a resemblance to his mother, and Bernice Worden was said to look like Ed's mother as well. She was shot in her store with a .22 and then dissected in his home. He murdered 2 women and possibly his brother when he was caught. The cops were in for quite a shock. He made a mistake when killing Bernice. He left a sales slip with his name on it after buying antifreeze at the store. Warden's son had come home from a hunting trip to find a pool of blood on the floor, and he'd seen the slip with Ed's name on it. True Kind Arthur Michael reports that since it looked like he was the last person to see her alive, they had detained him and searched his house. They entered his house looking for one body and found more than they bargained for. This is a picture of his bedroom. And this is where this box is covered in body parts. It has body parts inside of it. His bed frame had gum all over it. He kept gum that he chewed. And perhaps his most famous work is the nipple belt. This is made from pieces of dead bodies, obviously. And as Horspool states, the police had the severe misfortune of discovering this. They found Warden's dissected body hanging from the rafters, and more than enough evidence to bring him in. Geen was declared mentally insane, and he was institutionalized for 10 years before he was found guilty and sent back to the institution. And he is the inspiration behind many serial killer movies, though not technically one himself, with only 2 official kills. His childhood and his mother became the staple for many tragic backstories, and he didn't know how to cope with her death. He was caught going down as something of an American legend. People considered him hardworking, if a quiet man. Who knows what the person next to you is hiding?